So I've gone live a minute early. I'll just give until 5 o'clock before I actually start going through the webinar. Just give people a chance to join. So it's 5 o'clock. We're live. So it makes sense to start. If anybody jumps on halfway through, they'll be able to watch it back, or it'll stay recorded on LinkedIn after the webinar anyway. So today's webinar is a Lexplore webinar, and it's about what is Lexplore and why should I consider it for my school. I'll just share an outline agenda with you. So I'll start off by introducing myself and the webinar itself. I'll then give you a little bit of context around why we put these webinars on and why we think Lexplore is so important. I'll then share a bit of information around what Lexplore is, or what is Lexplore, and then why should your school or MAT or even a group of schools, LAs, anybody really could use Lexplore in a school, a group, or a MAT. We'll then have a quick look at some of the features of the portal. So I will actually jump into the portal live and I'll show you around some of what I deem the key features. I'll then talk to you a little bit about a Lexplore impact project that we're running that we think's going to have a lot of impact for children and young people across the country, and then where you can find out more information and any future webinar dates. So the first thing, introductions. So my name's Chris Toyne. I'm part of the team who run UK operations for Lexplore. There's two other colleagues, Dave and Tom, and I'll share their details later. I've been in education and ed tech for 25 years plus now, which makes me feel a bit old. And so have Dave and Tom. So between us, we've got a combined 75 years experience of working with education, and absolutely love working with Lexplore. It's one of the bits of ed tech that when I saw it, I was like, wow. And that was long before I started working with them. So now it's an absolute pleasure to be working with Lexplore, having seen the system and the software and the service and how it can support children and young people. So today's webinar is designed to be 20 to 30 minutes maximum. It's just a really high-level view of Lexplore and what it is and how it can help you. We have got some more webinars lined up that will jump into a bit more detail, and you can always reach out and we'll tell you we'll share some more information with you. It's live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, so you can access it across all of those platforms. It's been advertised on all of those platforms as well, and you'll be able to watch it back afterwards on all of those platforms. So if at any point you have to dip out or you didn't hear anything, you can come back and watch it again on the same platform you're watching it on. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the chat, depending on how feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar via the chat in the platform that you're using. Depending on how we're going, I'll either share the questions partway through the webinar, or I'll share them and try to answer them at the end. I'm conscious it's a 5 o'clock start, and some of you will be at home, some will still be in school. Either way, I don't want to keep you longer than the 30 minutes maximum. So I'll address the questions either partway through as they come up or at the end. So if you've asked one and it's not been answered, don't be shocked. I'll do it at the end. So just to give you a bit of context around why we think Lexplore's really important and reading in general, the National Literacy Trust have said that we are living in a cost of literacy crisis, and some stats that I've pulled from a recent report. So teachers estimate that a third of students are weak readers and need additional support to keep up with the content that they've been taught. 84% of teachers have felt at a loss sometimes about how to help a struggling reader. I'll touch on this as we go through, but there are some hidden difficulties that you sometimes don't unearth, and Lexplore allows you to see what the student or the child is actually reading through their eyes. Last year, over 185,000 5-year-olds in England started school without the literacy skills that they need to thrive. And that's obviously a big issue. And then you combine that with reading enjoyment is at crisis point. So last year, less than half of 8 to 18-year-olds said that they enjoy reading in their free time, which is quite startling. And Lexplore is a really engaging tool, and I'll touch on it again in a minute, but it's really engaging and hopefully helps those children that are a bit disengaged to become more engaged in reading as a subject. So what is Lexplore? Well, it's a reading development service that can work for any school or mat. It's a whole school offer, and it's broken down into 3 key components. So assessments, insights, and then reading development. And those 3 are linked together. That said, if you have got some interventions in place in school, Lexplore will complement those interventions and offer you something a little bit different in terms of our interventions. So don't be put off if you think, well, we're doing something in school. I really like the look of the assessment, but we're doing something in school. Just reach out and we'll have a chat with you in a bit more detail. So to just break those down into a bit more detail then. So the assessments, they're objective, they're undertaken by individuals, they give insights into both aloud reading and quiet reading or silent reading. They're time and cost effective. So each assessment takes between 3 and 5 minutes. And when I say 3 and 5 minutes, that's based on the experience of the assessor and how often the student or child or pupil has done an assessment. So if you're a new assessor and the student has never done an assessment before, you'll be closer to the 5 minutes. As they get used to the assessment and they feel more engaged and you're used to it, you get that down to around about 3 minutes. Our recommendation would be that you do assessments 2 to 4 times per academic year. And we always find when we speak to students and teachers that they're more engaging than traditional methods. And some of that is because they're short, and they take 3 minutes, but some of it is because it uses technology that the children really like. You use an eye tracker that attaches to the bottom of your monitor, and that eye tracker then tracks the eye movements of the students or pupils, and they'll have seen this technology in use with PlayStations and things like that. So you then get powerful insights almost immediately. So I'd say the average from doing an assessment to the insights being available for that student is around about 20 seconds maximum. I very rarely see it go above that. So the data is there immediately, straight away. It gives you a visualization of reading development and progression. It enables early intervention and prevention. So the assessment is available from year 1 upwards to year 13. It helps you make data-informed decisions in school or across the mat or across the group, and it enables efficient resource planning. And then the reading development service allows you to recommend reading fluency practice, some intervention materials, there's guides to support teachers. And we'll not go into this part in too much detail today. There'll be another webinar on this, but also allows you to log digital reading in a diary, so you can start to look at assessments, what reading development's taking place, and what the student's reading. Is it appropriate? How much are they reading? And so on and so on. So why should your school or mat consider Lexplore? I'll share these slides afterwards with anybody who's registered to attend, or if you've not registered to attend and you've just dropped on the webinar, then feel free to drop me a message via the Lexplore Analytics LinkedIn page, and I'll share them with you as well. But our approach to reading development can help across 3 different areas. So the MATS group or school itself, the student and the teacher. And I won't go into loads of detail about each of these because I'd like to jump into the system and show you some of what I think are the key benefits. So I'll go through them really quickly. For a MAT group or school, it's a true reading assessment. So there's no written element. And I've seen students in several schools now where people are blown away by how they answer comprehension questions as part of the Lexplore assessment. And in reality, when you speak to the student, it's because they can verbalize an answer, but they can't write the answer. So in a more traditional test, they'd struggle to get the comprehension questions right. It allows prevention before intervention because we go right down to year one. And actually, I've seen this today. A colleague of mine has been out in the school today, and they use it for year one. And they've said that is going to have a knock-on effect across the whole school because they get into the students that really need support or the pupils that really need support early, so that it's more preventative than intervention. I mentioned effective resource planning earlier. There's some resources available in the system. You may already have some resources, or as part of the impact project, we can talk about what resources you would need if that's something you're interested in. It's quick and reliable. I've told you about the times. Everything's in one place. So the view, and I'll show you this, the view for a mat is the same as a view for a school. And then you're looking at a class and you drill right down into each individual pupil. It's time and cost effective. It works for all pupils. So even those high ability pupils, using Lexplore, you can start to see if there's any hidden coping strategies. So they're a high ability reader, but they've developed a coping strategy, and that's enabled them to be a high ability reader. It might be that you've got a high ability reader who really struggles with silent reading and so on. It allows you to spot that because you can assess aloud reading and silent reading. It gives an insight into common reading difficulties. So we've identified some common reading difficulties. Lexplore allows you to have an insight into those reading difficulties. It's a consistent picture in insights. There is a measure of fluency, which I'll show you shortly. And as I mentioned previously, it's modern and it's engaging for students. So for the student themselves, it means they get the right support at the right time. There's less lost learning. So you haven't got a hall full of students spending an hour to an hour and 15 minutes doing a written assessment, and they've lost that hour to an hour and 15 minutes of learning time. They're out of the classroom, they're assessed within 3 minutes, and they're back in the classroom and learning. Because it's more engaging, there's increased motivation for students. And I'd say I've asked hundreds, if not thousands of students, what do they think of the assessment? And I'd say around about 99% say that it's great and it's more engaging for them. And that's because it's not an outdated method of assessment. It allows targeted support, so the student is better supported and there's follow-up for them. And it is possible using the reading diary or the digital reading diary to gamify reading without any high-stakes outcomes. So you can look at who's read the most in a week and who's read the most in this term and that sort of stuff. How many books have they completed, etc. Because it allows us to spot common reading difficulties that are typically hard to spot, that helps students with confidence. And then Lexplore can, like I said earlier, help those students who've developed a coping strategy. So for teachers, reduce workload, no data analysis, it's evidence-based, they have more time for students, there's training and support guides as well as the initial training at the start, there's online learning and support material, and it allows a whole school approach to reading. So reading is the gateway to learning in other subjects, and it allows that whole school approach to reading. You can see what each child sees when they're reading, and you can involve the parents and carers in their child's reading development through the digital reading diary and sharing of data and insights. So what does it look like? I'm sure everybody who's watching wants me to jump in, and I can see there's a number of you watching, want me to jump in and take a quick look at Lexplore. I'll go through the flow and then I'll show you an actual student or pupil record. So I've got a tab open already. This is a demo school. There's no pupil it's all dummy data in here. It's not actual students, but you can see here I'm in an academy trust. So I've got data at academy trust level. Really quickly, from that 3-minute assessment, the students have been banded into these bands. So emergent reader through to high ability reader. Across the trust, I've got 987 pupils assessed. I've got a breakdown by percentages. I've got overtime, and I can look at terms if I want to. So you've got all sorts of data here. I've then got the individual schools. So if I want to, let's take a look at Holy Trinity, for example. I've got the same level of data, so it's consistent throughout. So if you're looking at a trust, I'm now into a school, it's consistent and the view's the same. So you don't have to learn anything different. We can at both levels as well look at individual year groups if we want to. And we can drill into individual classes. So I can see all the classes across my school. I can see how many pupils need support in each of those classes. But let's just choose one. We'll choose it at random. We'll go for Miss Jackson. And I'm now into Miss Jackson's class. And as I've said before, it's consistent. It's the same picture. You can see the same data. You don't have to learn anything different across the different roles that you would undertake in school. And I've got a list of pupils within this class and a table with some key data in here. I'm not going to go through this data because I'll show you an individual student's record, but I can, if I want to, change that table. So I could say, show me if the pupil's EAL, show me the gender. I don't want to see their previous result, and I don't want to see the reading age, etc. I just want to see standardized score. So I can build this table to look exactly how I want it to look. I'm not going to do that. I am going to take a look at Dominic here, and we'll be able to see, again, remember this is dummy data, so we'll be able to see Dominic's record. And the system has taken a look at, so I'm going to repeat myself and say the 3-minute assessment has taken place. And from that 3-minute assessment, 20 seconds later, I can see which band Dominic falls into, which percentile Dominic is in comparison to the data set. I can hit the information button if I want to know a bit more about what a percentile is or reading ability is. So anywhere where there's a measure, I can find out more info. You can see the Lexplore score, which allows us to measure smaller steps of progress. So anything average-based, like a percentile, it's perfectly feasible that throughout a child's time in school, they stay in the same percentile or band, but we know they're making progress. So the Lexplore score allows us to see that they're making progress as well. We've got a year level equivalent, some comprehension questions here. So 6 to 8 correct comprehension questions, and then some recommendations around fluency. So I can say, these are the recommendations that the data has produced based on the band that Dominic falls into. And I can look at the recommended fluency practice, which I'll do on a different webinar when we're looking in a bit more detail. And I could push that fluency practice to the reading app so that the student or pupil can access it at home with parents or with teaching assistants in school on devices, etc. But what I'm interested in today is, what does an assessment look like? So I've got a range of assessments here for Dominic. Let's go with this one. So we'll go for the one that took place on the 25th of the 5th, 23. You'll be able to do this for their whole time in school. So you can go back through and see what's taken place in school. And I've got some more data here now. So I've got reading speed. Like I said earlier, this is dummy data. So just ignore the patterns. But the 9 words per minute is the average reading speed. They had an out loud reading speed of 9 words per minute. There's not a silent speed here because the year group the students in, they've taken 2 out loud assessments. It gives me the number of characters per minute in the rapid naming part of the assessment, which I will show you shortly. And we've then got the interesting measure around fluency, which is saccadic length. So the characters that form the saccadic length, and it's easier for me to show you this on the video that I'll show you in a minute. How often the child regresses back through the text. So do they read forwards and then read backwards, which is not always a bad thing. Some children develop a coping strategy where they'll read a paragraph, then they'll reread the last 5 words, then they'll read and reread the last 5 words, and so on, and it aids the comprehension. But we can see that. We can see where they're regressing through the text, and are there any patterns around the type of words that they're rereading? Can we help them with those types of words, etc.? So it allows us to really drill into any difficulties this child might be facing. an average fixation time on words, and then a repeat of some of the information before, and a standardized score. And then finally, a list of what I'd call sticky words. So this list here is the words that the student has struggled to decode the most, so they've taken longer to decode each of these words. And if I want to look at all the words that are there, I can go through all the assessments, all the words within the assessment, and see from longest to decoded the quickest. But where schools go wow is when I show them what all this actually looks like through the child's eyes. So I mentioned RAN earlier, so I'll start with rapid naming. That's the first part of the assessment. So they read a series of characters. They give us their names, and they go through those characters and they name them. So it'd be S, A, K, C, N, T, and so on. Once they've done that, they will read a passage of text out loud. So here's the out loud assessment. And I'll pause this in a minute. I'll let it just run through past the first bit. And I'll take it back a little bit. So what we're seeing here is each of these bubbles are how long it's taking the pupil to decode those words. So the bigger the bubble, the longer it's taking them to decode. And we can also switch and look at eye movements here. So if I switch that to eye movements, we've got the left and the right eye, and we've got the student or pupil reading through the text. And you see things here sometimes. So if they're squinting, the eyes might disappear. One of the eyes might be doing all the reading. They've developed a coping strategy and so on. And that applies to all different abilities for reading. We can touch on that in more detail. If you want us to show you in more detail, we can do that in a demo. I'll pause that for now, and I will try to show you. Well, actually, I'll show you. There's a second passage of text which they read out silently. So here, there's a second passage of text, and they read that silently. Once they've done that, you get all the data that it's just shown you after they've answered some comprehension questions. So down here, I've got some comprehension questions. The pupil's been asked after the first text and then the second, and you mark whether they got them correct or wrong. And that takes 3 minutes. I'll try and show you a different ability reader. So I've got someone here who's a high ability reader, Brett. I'll show you his most recent assessment. And let's just play a passage of text. And you can see here, the bubbles are smaller. They're not taking as long to decode words. They're skipping over those words. And that allows me to show you the saccades or the saccadic length. So between each of these decoding points, there's a line, and that's a saccade. And that's how we get the measure of fluency around the characters. So that's a whistle-stop tour. But that's Lexplore itself. There are some instruction materials up here, so we can access materials for teachers and so on. Again, we'll do that on a different webinar. This is designed to be 20 to 30 minutes. I've not got any questions, so if anyone's got any questions, they can put them in the chat. But for now, I'll jump back to the slides that I've got and just tell you a little bit about what we call the Impact Project. So Literacy Impact Project, the aims of that project are to elevate reading skills among pupils, and we'll focus on fluency, comprehension, reading for pleasure, and identifying and addressing reading difficulties. Target groups will include pupils from the bottom 20%, pupil premium boys, boys in years 5 and 6. Oh, sorry, pupils in year 5 and 6, and then pupils in year 2. And disengaged readers and high ability readers. That said, we are working with secondary schools around transition as well as part of the project. So if you're a secondary school who's watching and you want to find a bit more out about how we'd help with transition, let us know. We can do that as well. The key highlights of the project are targeted interventions for those groups of pupils, a comprehensive 15-week program incorporating baseline assessments, intervention planning, material creation if we need to, and dedicated 8-week interventions. And then we do a reassessment to measure any progress that's taken place over that period of time. And a large part of the project is around collaboration within your school group and MAT. with Lexplore and the map, but also across all of those who are taking part in an impact project. It'll allow us to build a community that shares best practice and shared learning. A quick overview, because of time, but there's 6 phases to the project. So there's the initial baseline assessment, there's then some analysis and intervention planning, there's then material creation and strategy development. We'll implement, or you would implement the interventions, then reassess and look at the analysis, and then report and future planning around all pupils. So Lexplore is designed to be a whole school solution. So after the impact project, the idea would be that you widen this to a larger group of pupils. Things that need to be considered: it is about collaboration within the establishment and outside. So you have to consider that. There is some technology integration as well. So things like your MIS will integrate with Lexplore through Wand. And there's an element of professional development for your teachers, because there's some things that they will pick up around known reading difficulties that you might not spot without the use of Lexplore. The target groups are 5 pupils from each of the bottom 20%, pupil premium boys, year 5, 6, or 7 pupils. And if it's year 7 pupils, that will be 10, not 5. And then year 2 pupils, and then disengaged readers and high ability readers, because it's important to point out that Lexplore can be used across the whole school, and you learn about your high ability readers and how to best support them as well. The benefits of the impact project: it's targeted 15-week project and it's designed for impact. There's a chance to see the difference that Lexplore makes. With the license fee is lower initially because it's a targeted group of pupils, and then at the end of the project, we'd look at how many pupils you want to use it for across the whole group. And there's support throughout the project from us and our team here in the UK. So where can you find out more information? I'll not read through all of these, the links, but you can find information on our website. You can find us on LinkedIn, and I will share these slides, like I said earlier, with anyone who's registered or who asked for them. You can contact a member of the UK team. The easiest way to do that from this slide deck would be on LinkedIn, but we'll also put a contact form in the comments so that you can reach out via the contact form and ask for more information and help. And there's our phone number there as well. So if you just want to pick up the phone, you can give us a ring. We answer the phone in the office, and there's always somebody manning it. And then I've mentioned several times throughout this webinar, future webinar dates that will delve into a bit more detail. So we've got webinars on a whole school approach to reading development, a map-wide approach to reading development, a webinar in the diary for revolutionizing reading through eye tracking technology, and another one that's titled "Ensure No Child Gets Left Behind When Reading." And the dates are there. They're all on LinkedIn. You can pick those up anywhere. And that's the end of the short webinar. There's no questions for me to go through, so I'll end on our mission, which we think we can achieve together, and that's to make the world a better place, one reader at a time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Look out for more webinars, and we're also about to release the Lexplore Roadshow. So we work with schools all over the country and into Wales as well. So we're about to release some dates for a webinar. For a Lexplore Roadshow. We'd be happy to have anyone who's a customer or not a customer as part of that roadshow, and it's a chance for you to learn more and speak to people who actually use the system itself. Thanks for watching, and hope to speak to you soon.